We've got the most popular consumer grade 3D scanners and we're going to test them all back to back. Oh yeah, it's a scan off. Welcome to Making for Motorsport, where we make more, spend less and go faster. So like I say, we've got a load of 3D scanners to try out. We've got the CR01, we've got the CR-Lizard, we've got the Pop2, and we've also got the Einstar from Shining 3D. So we're going to compare all 4 scanners across a variety of different scans. So we're going to do car panel, we're going to do the ubiquitous hub that you've seen before on the channel, and we're going to do some very, very accurate 1, 2, 3 blocks and slightly less accurate face. And finally, we'll do a small figurine to see how these scanners get on with small objects and fine details. And I only know how to operate a couple of them. So we've got Dave here from DC3D, who uses these scanners a whole load more in his business. And he's a bit of an expert. So over to you, what's DC3D do?
DC3D makes car parts for interiors, working on exterior parts. Currently running a small website. It started as a hobby, moved towards a business and got into these sort of budget scanners, and it's been a lot of fun.
Cheers to that. Let's get stuck in.
Yeah, great.
First up, it's my ugly mug, but before that I just want to talk about the process of the video, because we've got a lot of scans to do here, 16 in total, and that could take us a really long time if we were trying to go for perfection for every single scan. So instead, what we're going to do is show you what a competent person with each scanner can do in a relatively short period of time. So each of these scans can probably be improved upon, but that would take a significant amount of time more. So this will show you what you can kind of expect out of the box. But we will show how much time we spent on each scan on the video, so you can get an idea for how long it takes to process and how much time you have to put towards it. What we will do is call out where the software doesn't work, if there's any problems, if there's any crashes, but we will leave the final judgment to you guys. I'll put the scans on the screen and hey, you've got eyes. You can check out the results for yourselves and make up your own minds about which one you think is best. Right then, on to the CR01. And it did a great job. It didn't lose tracking much, but where it did, it picked it up again nice and cleanly. We got the whole scan done in about 90 seconds, but it did take 9 minutes for the scan to process, which is on the higher end of the scanners we have here. But we will talk about the laptop specs later, because of course a better laptop is always going to help the processing time. So now onto the CR-Lizard, which uses the same software as the CR01. Now this took slightly longer to scan, 3 minutes, and that's due to the smaller field of view that the Lizard has. But processing time, 7 minutes, was slightly quicker. It did start to struggle tracking on the larger areas of the jumper that tend to look all the same, and that's down to just the lack of features in the field of view. But on the whole, did a good job. So the Pop2 was up next, and that was going great until we got onto the hair, where it lost tracking and then picked it up again in the wrong place and made me look like a Picasso. So we ditched that scan, had another go at it, and the scan was completely done in 90 seconds. Then it took 11 minutes to do the processing, which is a pretty long time. Fortunately, we had beer. Last up, it's the Einstar, and thanks to the big field of view, we had no tracking issues and we got a lot of scanning done in only 2 minutes. Processing, on the other hand, was a bit of an issue because this happened. So then we had to go get the desktop out. Now for the rest of the test we will use the desktop for the Einstar, but we'll stick with the laptop for the rest of the scanners, and I will talk about hardware required and the kind of PC rig you need to run these later, because that is very relevant. So then we had another go with the Einstar and it did another good job on the face, no issues with tracking whatsoever. It took about 2.5 minutes to do the scan this time, and only 3 minutes 40 for the processing. So let's have a look at the scans. So we've got the Pop2, the Einstar, the Lizard and the CR01. Now, I can't really see a huge amount of difference here, so I'll let you guys pick which one you think is best. So please put in the comments which scanner you think has done the best, not just for this, but for every single trial we do. Now personally, I think each one of these is pretty good and very useful as a scan, but also bear in mind that pretty much each of these could be improved upon if you spent a bit more time and effort, as you would do if any one of these was your only scanner. However, for this trial, to get this video actually made inside 2 years, we've got to go for whatever the scanner gives us pretty much straight away. And with that in mind, let's move on to the next test. Next up, we've got the upright. Now, this is from a Vauxhall Corsa, and regular watchers will have seen this in most of my other scanning videos. Now, I have scanned this already in great detail with the Lizard and the Einstar, but I'm going to throw those scans away because, as I say, I'm trying to give each scanner equal opportunity. So we're going to do a quick scan with all 4 scanners to give ourselves an equal and fair footing. First up, the Einstar. So unlike the review video for the Einstar, we only did a single position scan for this one, but it took us about 7 minutes and we were focused on getting everything as green as possible. However, the scan ended up with a misalignment error like you can see here. So we ran the optimized processing and that cleared up the model quite nicely. So that took about 4.5 minutes, and then we removed all of the unwanted point cloud points with the in software editing tools and then ran the full meshing. And 90 seconds later, we had this. So now we have the Creality CR01, and the first scan we did was disappointing. And Dave was sure this scanner could do better, and being structured light, we tried it with the lights off, and that worked a hell of a lot better. So on this second attempt, we spent about 3 minutes scanning, again only doing a single position just to see how much we can pick up in that one go round. And then we spent about 5.5 minutes processing. We had very few tracking losses with the CR01, and any we did got picked up again really quickly by the software. So we did end up with a decent scan, but it's worthwhile remembering this was our second bite at the cherry. Which brings us to the Pop2. Now Dave has spent a lot of time with this scanner, so he's quite comfortable with it, and everything seemed to be going pretty well. This was the result that we got. And yes, it's recognisably the upright, but it also looks like it's got leprosy. So just like the CR01, we broke out the scanning spray and turned the lights off just in case it was the garage lights kind of interfering with the scanner. We spent 2 minutes scanning the item, so it's really quick, and only 3 minutes processing. However, this is what we ended up with. Still got a touch of dragon scale. So then finally on the upright, we've got the CR-Lizard. And yeah, well, this was going well. And then we had a misalignment error. So we have to start again. And again, it was going well, but then we had another misalignment error. This is mainly to do with the circles on the drive flange and the scanner just losing its way in terms of rotation. So to try and help the Lizard, we put on some Acer Blue dulling spray, and when we were scanning, really made sure to try and keep a feature in the view of the scanner that wasn't purely a circle or had rotational symmetry, and that worked out pretty well. So overall we spent 4 minutes scanning and 3 minutes processing on the winning scan, but this was the third go. So there is a little bit more to talk about for each one of these scans, so I'm going to go through them individually. So this is the CR01, and okay, not so much detail in this as maybe some of the other scanners, but you can certainly see it's captured the character of the part, and yeah, there's some holes, but a lot of these would get picked up with a second scan, no problems. So you can see in here there is the potential for, again, a really nice scan. So next up we've got the Einstar, and we know how well this can do from my other videos, and it's done quite well here. You've got the character of the part, there's more than enough information here to reverse engineer from, and a lot of these holes will be picked up or fixed with a second scan or with a little bit of post-processing in the software. But overall, it's a good scan and, you know, perfectly usable. So next up we've got the Pop2, and as you can see the surface finish is terrible, but it's got enough geometry so actually it's recognisable, and it has missed a lot underneath. Again, a second scan would fix a lot of that, but it's just not a good looking thing. Clearly it struggled here. So then looking at the Lizard scan, which it looks pretty good. Yeah, there's the odd rendering issue around the spigot on the drive flange that, yeah, a bit more work would help. But one thing that does stand out is just how much of the model that has been picked up in one scan only, and how well also it's rendered the holes, and how well the scanner sees down into those holes, which is always a difficulty for 3D scanners. So overall, that is a perfectly usable scan if you wanted to reverse engineer from it. So just like before, guys, get involved down in the comments and let me know which scanner you think has done the best job and why you think that. So before the next scan, I'm just going to talk briefly about the hardware requirements. So as you can see, we've had to take the desktop out of the warmth of the man cave down to the garage just for the Einstar. But we're still going to use the laptop for the other scanner. So that might not seem fair, but actually I'll tell you why. So that's because the Einstar has much higher hardware requirements than the other two scanners do. And if you look here on the website, it's quite weighty. It needs quite a rig, an 11th gen i7 and 32 gig of RAM and 6 gig of VRAM. Now, if that's what Shining 3D are saying this scanner needs, then it's not really fair to test it on anything that's significantly less. So the other manufacturers, RevoPoint for the Pop2, say that an i5 with 8 gig of RAM is fine. More is better, but you know, you can use it with a mobile phone. So, you know, clearly that doesn't need the power. And I struggle to find clear answers on the CR-Lizard, but both of for the software for this CR01 and the Lizard, we're talking 8 gig of RAM, 2 gig of VRAM, and a USB 3 port. So clearly they're not asking for the world. So in my opinion, it's fair to test these scanners with different hardware because they're asking for different hardware. They need different hardware, and I'll put the specs of my two computers up over here. But maybe not quite so fair to compare processing times. But even so, if the manufacturers think it needs more power, then they should tell you that you need to have more power. But the upshot here is, guys, that if you're looking at the Einstar, you will need a far more powerful computer than if you're looking at any of the other three scanners. Worth bearing in mind, because whilst everyone's got a mobile phone to run the Pop, a high-end computer, well, they're not cheap anymore. Now we're going to scan the front of the Mini, a completely different challenge from the other two scans. First up, we've got the CR-Lizard, and this one didn't go so well. The Lizard was fine as long as we had really strong features to work with, but as soon as we tried to go onto any of the actual panel itself, it really struggled. And this is what's said as an advantage, no tracking dots required, becomes a bit of a disadvantage because, yeah, you don't need them on every scan, but they'd be really useful here if we could put them on. So, yeah, fair enough, Lizard. You tried, but not so good. So sticking with Creality, we'll go to the CR01 next, and this did fairly well. It lost tracking occasionally, but thanks to the large field of view and the silky skills of David, it picked it up again, no problems, and we got all of the scan done in one go, in one shot, in 3 minutes. However, it took 19 minutes to process, and when we got through the processing, we got to the repair stage, which we'd unwisely left on, and the scan did this. However, with a few more tweaks of the settings and editing the point cloud, I'm sure we could have got a much better scan, something that would be really useful. Next up, we had the Pop2, and this also had a few issues. So first off, we tried just scanning as is, and it struggled. Now, we could have used markers, but Dave tried a trick that is used before where we put a crumpled blanket just off to the side of the area we want to scan. That means that we get a non-repeating marker the scanner can latch onto, so we don't get tracking issues, but we weren't getting a clean skin. As bad as the paint is on the Mini, it's not that bad. So Dave wasn't happy about that, so we gave it another go and put loads of Acer blue scanning spray on and moved the rug down towards the wheel arch so the Pop2 would have a better chance of tracking. Now, Dave has used this technique many times instead of the tracking dots and had great success. So we really should get a better result out of it this time. And there you go, it's a definite improvement on the previous scan. And finally on the mini scans, it's the Einstar, and to be fair, we've left the best till last. There were a few tracking issues on some of the planar pieces, but the Einstar picked up tracking, no problems, no issues. This was the first scan we tried with no markers, no scanning spray, no nothing, and it just ate it up. We spent about 7 minutes on the scanning, 7 minutes on processing the point cloud, and then 5 minutes finally meshing it, and it was worth every second. No need for voting this time, guys. The answers are pretty obvious. In fourth place is the Lizard, just not the right usage case for this scanner. In third place is the Pop2. It's a useful scan. You'd definitely be able to use it to get some contours, some shapes off, but again, it's not particularly pretty. In second place, it's the CR01. This was the type of scan that this scanner is meant for, large field of view, and it's done very well. To be fair, most of the issues you can see in the kind of the pink and red hatching, they're mainly from processing. If I still had this scan data, I would reprocess it, but I don't. But you can still see in here, another go, a bit more care, and you're going to get a useful scan off this. Right then, final part now, and we're not really going to focus on the scanning process. We're going to focus on the part and what came out. So this is a 1, 2, 3 block, so called because it is 1 inch by 2 inches by 3 inches, precisely. These are used by machinists to very, very accurately set things up off beds and fixture them. So they are known to a very, very high degree, and these are very, very accurate, even the cheap ones, and this was a very cheap one. So accurate? Well, let's see what Mr. Mititoyo says of it. 76.2, precisely 3 inches. Caliper's not accurate enough? Let's try a micrometer. There you go. So, let us not question the size of this. Let's use this as the standard to measure the scanners. And seeing as we're talking precision, what's more precision than a German? It's time for the Stein. Sehr good. Now, I don't want to really talk about the scanning process to get the scans of this, because quite honestly, it's a nightmare. There is no reason why you would 3D scan this other than to test the dimensional accuracy. So I'm not even going to talk about it. So in order to be as accurate as possible, I'm going to use GOM Inspect, which is full-on pro-grade inspection software, which makes it very powerful, but it also makes it rather complicated. So I was going to talk you guys through every step of me doing the measurement here, but quite honestly, it's long-winded and a little bit boring. So I'm going to bypass that step and put this measurement process with GOM Inspect and also another slightly less accurate one with Mesh Mixer on the Patreon page. You can see the address here, and it will be completely free and available for everybody. In the meantime, we're just going to head back to the results, and you're just going to have to trust me that I've done this as accurately as I possibly can. Right then, so I've done a bit of maths, and you can tell that because I've got my glasses on and I've got this spreadsheet. So this gives all the measurements that I've taken aligned by the nominal dimension that I was measuring in X, Y, and Z. And we've got the measured dimension here, the error to the nominal dimension, and the percentage of the nominal that that error represents. So starting with the Einstar, we've got 0.2 and 0.07, and they both represent about 0.3 percentage error, and that's pretty good. I think that's I'm quite happy with that. That's well within what I could measure myself on anything but flat surfaces. And I mean, this is less than the thickness of a piece of paper, and obviously across the smaller dimension, it's just, what's that, human hair? It's That's really good. I'm quite impressed with that. The CR01, we only got one measurement away because the scan was, quite honestly, such a mess. Again, this is a challenging part, so I don't really blame the CR01, but it still tells you that we got within, 0.4 millimeters of the nominal dimension. So actually, although it was a mess, there was still some underlying accuracy there. The Lizard, which gave us probably the best aesthetic scan, actually gave us the worst dimensional results. So we're 0.5 and 0.4 of a millimeter, give or take, out. And that varies, again, across the two dimensions. So is that just a general offset issue that we have in the software? Because the numbers are fairly similar over vastly different dimensions. We don't know. I can't actually recalibrate the Lizard standard. That comes set from the factory, so maybe that's part of it. Who knows? And finally, we have the Pop2, which gives us over the 3-inch dimension a storming result of 0.1% error, 0.07 of a millimeter. That's fantastic. That's like 3 thou. But on the Y dimension, we've got nearly twice that error, over 2/3 of the distance. So did Pop get lucky, or is it just a bit more inconsistent? But it's got some good accuracy. I don't know. If I took about 3 different scans of the block and did this analysis, I'd probably have a bit more science. But quite honestly, ain't nobody got time for that. But this gives you a really clear idea of where you're going to land with accuracy on these scanners straight out the box. So the last thing we're going to scan is a little figurine. So plenty of detail on this, a lot smaller than our normal scan and purely aesthetic. How big is it? Well, banana for scale. So first up, we'll do the CR-Lizard, and pretty much all of these scans are going to be from the turntable and tripod. So we've got the little house on the turntable, and the Lizard is just eating it up. It's done very, very quickly, 1 circulation, and it's got all the points it needs. I do a second scan by laying the house on its back, and that gives me just a little bit more coverage. Again, the software is taking care of all of this. Once I've done the 2 scans, I just put the 2 together. The plates were automatically recognised, and I clicked a line, and the software just did the job for me. It was very, very easy. This whole scan took me 2.5 minutes to do the 2 individual scans, and then only 2.25 minutes to do the alignment and the processing, and it just worked first time. And it gave a pretty good result. I'm happy with this. Then we've got the CR01. So it's took overall a long time because I'm not that familiar with this scanner. So it took me probably half an hour to get a half decent scan off. But that was more about making sure, getting an idea for what affects it and learning it. But once I've got a good idea of the scanner, it didn't take long to get a decent scan out of it. And generally 2 minutes of scanning and 2 minutes of processing is all it took to get this. Now, quite honestly, I could probably get this improved a decent amount with some post-processing, but at the same time you're running up against the limitations of the scanner, of the resolution, because it's just not made for things with this amount of detail. So unfortunately somebody forgot to turn on the screen recording for this, so I've not got a huge amount of footage and the camera drops out. So you're going to have to take my word for it that this felt like one of the longest scans, probably about 10 minutes, because the Einstar is really gathering a lot of data at 0.1 millimeter resolution, and it takes a lot of rotations to get to that green on the data quality indicator. But the scan itself came out pretty well, considering that small items aren't this scanner's forte. And then finally, the last scan of the review, and it's the Pop2. And much like the Lizard, this really did a great job. It took me only 40 seconds to do a scan, and it took a couple of minutes to process, and the Pop2 just, made a good job of it. I only did a single position scan, but that still gave plenty of detail, missing a little bit of data under one of the overhangs, but to be fair, that's not a major issue, because another scan, a little bit more care, and this would clean up very nicely. But I don't think you're going to improve on the overall level of detail that you see within it without some serious faffing around with the software. So it's the last comparison of the test, and first up we'll do the Pop2. So you can see we've got a little bit of missing data there, but it's not too much of an issue. You can see we've picked up some of the detail in the windows, and that really is fine detail stuff. So overall, that is a pretty good representation of the little house. I'm quite happy with that. Next up, it's the Einstar, and that almost looks like it's got better detail, certainly in some of the windows, but equally you've got some noise around some of the returns on the windows that, you know, isn't great, and there's a bit of noise around, so not quite as clean, but potentially, you know, you've got a bit more positivity around the details. Who knows? But again, you know, that with a little bit of time and effort to tidy that up, maybe take another scan, that's looking pretty good. Then onto the Lizard. So we've got all the details are captured nicely. It's a decent mesh. There's no gaps. All done automatically by the software. You can see there's a little bit of detail right in the window for those really small features. Possibly a little bit soft on some of the edges, but overall, again, you've got to be happy with that. That's a pretty good representation. And then finally, we've got the CR01, which we know is not going to be doing quite as well on this piece. There's a bit of noise around here on the right hand side and along the back area, but still it's picked up a reasonable amount of data on the front, and actually, you know, that could be cleaned up to some extent, but it's nowhere near as highly detailed as the other three scanners. So there you go, guys. Again, please put your comments in the comment section. Which one do you think is the best model here? Which one's done the best job at the little house? So I'm going to talk really quickly about the software, because the software is critical. Without the software, you can't talk to your scanner. You can't point it at a different piece of software and expect it to work. The scanner and the software are equally important, and the software is more important to the user experience. Now, first off, the CR01 and the Lizard use the same software, CR Studio. And so we've got three pieces of software to look at, and I'm happy to say all three are functional, and they are being regularly updated by the suppliers. So we've got improvements coming through all the time, and quite honestly, I think that's likely to continue. However, the three softwares are very much not created equal. So CR Studio, which is the Creality software for the CR01 and the Lizard, used to have a reputation for being quite buggy, used to crash a lot. That's not so much the case anymore. It seems very stable on my laptop. It runs perfectly well now, and it scans beautifully. However, it's a little bit limited in terms of extra features. So modifying the mesh, dialing in those repairs and the noise. You've pretty much got one slider for everything, and it feels very lightweight. It does the job. It's perfectly usable and relatively intuitive, but it feels like it's for a cheap scanner. It doesn't have all the options and the bells and the whistles in there. The RevoPoint software has kind of two sides to it. So there's two individual applications. One is focused on the scanning, and the other is focused on modifying the mesh and cleaning things up, which is a little disappointing. It would be better to have them in one package, but the RevoScan software has one big advantage, which is the ability to pause the scan and go back in time. So you've got an undo button, which is really, really useful. So if there is a misalignment, or you're getting to the end of a really good scan and everything's all in line and then it goes wrong, magic button, undo. And that's really useful, and you don't see that on any of the other software. However, that's pretty much the only positive I've got for the RevoScan software. It's a bit clunky, it's not very intuitive, and it just looks and feels cheap. And finally, we're onto the Einstar software. So the Einstar software package is, it's quite honestly, guys, it is a different gravy. It's a different league than the other software packages. You can tell that this is essentially a hand-me-down from the £5,000, £7,000, £10,000 scanners that are part of the Einstar range. It's got so much functionality, it's intuitive, it's easy to use, and it does pretty much everything you want it to do. So put simply, this software helps make the Einstar scanner the most intuitive, easy to use, user-friendly, and just the best user experience of the whole group. Big news, the channel now has a website. Well, it nearly does, because we're about to launch it. But Dave has done all the hard work on it, and it looks fantastic. There'll be inside information from all the videos, just like the scans from this video. So once we worked out how to do it, we'll upload all these scans there. So check out the description for the link. So when it goes live, we'll put it down there, and you guys can enjoy it. So everyone's going to want to know which one is the best scanner, and there is no answer to that. It comes down to what your budget is and what scans you're likely to do. So we've done a wide range of scans for this video. Those are the results. Yes, they could be improved, but it'll show you what each scanner is generally capable of. So for price, we'll put the prices, the best prices I can find anyway, down there, and they will change. Things will get cheaper, but you can see the CR01, the Lizard and the Pop are kind of in the same ballpark. But the Einstar is significantly more expensive, plus it needs more expensive hardware. So, you know, is that worth the money? Well, I'll leave that up to you guys. But there's no need to listen to me, who's been sent scanners for free. We've got Dave, who's owned 4 scanners and paid for all of them. So what's your take on it?
After owning the CR01, Revo Point 1, Pop 1, Pop 2, and now the Einstar, I've realised that you need more than one scanner really to cover all bases. Obviously you got your long range with the Einstar, and I've got the Pop 2 for short range. Certain items I'm scanning, you do need that short range. So based on what I know now, just decide which ones you think are best and go from there.
Personally, I'm going to keep my Lizard and the Einstar, and you're going to keep your Pop 2 and your Einstar. So
yeah, I mean that covers everything pretty much. They've all got pros and cons. They're all very good. Good thing is if I think his Lizard's going to do a better job at something, I'll pinch it off him. Vice versa.
So it's in summary, be a Dave. Be a Dave. Yeah, join the Dave crew. So it's up to you guys which scanner you think best fits your needs and your budget. But if you do want to buy one of these scanners and you'd like to support the channel, then please go down to the description and check out there, because we'll have a whole load of affiliate links depending on your location and what scanner you want to buy. So thank you very much for supporting the channel. Okay guys, keep your eyes peeled for the next video, because we're going to use 3D scanning, 3D printing and maybe some carbon fibre to make something pretty for the Mini.
And on that note, Dave, I've had enough. I think it's time to go to the pub.
Pub.
It's been a long scanning video.
Right guys, thanks for watching. Hit the thumbs up and subscribe. Cheers.